All right, so our next report is the Parameters Type Auditing Report. And so here we are auditing parameters from family types. If we start from the top, well, as usual, you can filter only a certain BIM model that you have, one of the links, for example. You can also look only at a certain category. So perhaps you want to clean up your door parameters. Here we have the parameter class. So this is very important to understand. There's three classes we see here. Built-in means that it came from the Revit template. You can get rid of it. So it's fine to make sure that the value in built-in parameters is valid. However, you cannot get rid of built-in parameters. So this is not where the most major cleanup is going to happen. The standard parameters are parameters that are added in each individual families. So if you have a parameter that's standard, that's in 20 families and you want to get rid of it, you have to open those 20 families and get rid of it. So it's kind of a tedious exercise. The project parameters are applied to every single parameter that fits the categories of that parameter. So for example, if you add a fire rating as a project parameter and you add it to the walls, floors, ceilings, and doors, any door, floor, ceilings, and walls that are going to be added to the project will automatically have that project parameter. So those parameters are much easier to clean. You remove it from a single category or you remove it entirely, and it's going to affect all of the related families. Finally, there are parameters, but I don't think that's even an option in parameter types. Now you can also just look at a particular parameter here, a single parameter, and that's going to make your list shorter. If you hold Control, you can select more than one parameter at a time in here to make a list. So let's look at the first matrix. The first matrix is the list of all of the parameters, how many elements it affects, how many times it's filled, what type of parameter it is, and so forth. There's a couple of ways of sorting this table. One of them is just simply alphabetically. And if you do it alphabetically, you may see some parameters that have the same name start to pop up in there. So if your parameters are not well managed, you may have multiple parameters with the same name that are going to appear here. Another way of doing it is to sort by count. So this is going to show you which parameters are the most prevalent in your model. And then if you care about quality, you can sort by the fill percentage. So this is going to show you all the parameters that are filled 100% all the way down to 0%. And when a parameter is filled 100%, we also show the number of distinct values, right? Because if you have a parameter that's filled 100% with garbage or empty data, well, it's not actually a good parameter as we see here. So MCA, whatever the heck that's supposed to mean, is always just filled with 0. And as you probably figured out by now, down here is the list of values. So whenever you click a parameter, multiple parameters, you're going to see all of the values for those parameters. So here, for example, for the frequency, we see that 132 out of the 142 times it's set to 0. So even though it's 100% filled, it's often filled with 0, which means it's not a high quality. The data in there is very low quality and needs to be fixed, or the parameter needs to disappear basically. I will say if you're trying to get rid of parameters entirely, don't even look at the built-in parameters. Just filter those out because you can't get rid of them. You can, however, improve the quality of the data inside of them. Okay, so when you select a parameter from the list, it's going to update the families that are containing that parameter in the matrix below. This is a relationship that is a bit slow because when we talk about a single type parameter, well, it could affect thousands of instances, thousands of elements. So whenever you don't select a parameter, the bottom table will likely be empty. And then when you do select a parameter, it'll slowly start filling out. So if we want to get more data in here in this bottom matrix, we can start drilling down. And this is going to tell us which types, which categories, which families have this parameter. And perhaps some of them are more filled than others. And we'll see this entire breakdown. And we can navigate this by drilling up and down in here. So here we see the data. We also see some example values. So for example, the mechanical equipment, here we see, yes, it's filled. However, it's filled with 0 CFM. So that kind of tells us that it's not properly filled. And one note about these three matrices, if you're going to select between them, you would start with the parameter And if you're going to start selecting from these two tables, just make sure that you hold control, or else it's going to lose the previous selection and not combine the selections together. So here I'm selecting all of the types of families with 0 CFM only. Or here, if I want to identify the two families that have 15 CFMs, once again, I'm holding control so I'm not losing that previous selection of the actual ventilation airflow. Okay, with that being said, you can navigate the report yourself. However, we did make some buttons here that are going to hone in on some particular scenarios. So right now it's set to all parameters. If I click on partial, it's going to filter the list of parameters to the one that are only partially filled. And this is a bit of a special table here. If you're going to click the Show Parameters table, you need to hold control if you're in the Power BI desktop app. However, once you publish it online, you no longer have to hold control. It's called a format navigator. So for some reason, it just works a bit different when you're in the Power BI desktop app. So we see here the list of partial parameters. Let's click on filled. This is going to look at only 100% filled parameters. And once again, we are able to identify which ones are kind of lower value by clicking here and seeing that it only has one distinct value in red. And finally, we have the parameters that are 100% empty. I don't think that's really a possibility with type parameters, but we can determine that with bigger data sets. All right, that's it for the Type Parameter Audit Report. We're going to move into the Parameter Instance Report. So this is probably where you're going to spend the bulk of your auditing of the data. Talk to you soon. Cheers.